Welcome back to Season 12 of Limited Supply, the only commerce podcast with unfiltered and refreshingly hot takes. I'm your host, Nick Sharma, and when I'm not recording, I'm behind the scenes scaling your favorite celebrity and consumer brands. Let's start talking all things direct-to-consumer. I'm going to tell you about a software that my agency, Sharma Brands, uses with our fastest scaling brands. Historically, last-click advertising channels, think Facebook, Google, or TikTok, they take too much credit for what they do. As a result, it's reduced confidence for brands to effectively scale their upper funnel strategies, which puts them in a pickle of higher CPAs. A few years ago, without Prescient, I would have said there's no real way to track what channels like YouTube, TV, or even newcomers like AppLovin are doing. But with Prescient, you can now look at daily, multi-channel forecasting and optimize your paid media without any bias. Prescient allows you to see the halo effect that is usually unrecognized with top-of-funnel channels and allows you to measure those down to the campaign level. See the impact your upper-funnel media really has on e-commerce, Amazon, and even retail stores. Plus, once you go live, since it's not a pixel-based platform, you'll have data and results populating within a week. Try it out and go to prescientai.com/limited to learn more. All right, so last week we talked about the different styles of pages and, essentially the fundamentals of why you need a page. And again, this was building off of an episode that came out a couple seasons ago that a lot of people found value in, and I got a ton of emails saying, you want another one? So we're diving right back in and just going to add some more context. So for today, we're going to dive into what the ingredients and sections are of a really good landing page. We're also going to then dive into the different questions that you want to make sure you're constantly answering on a landing page. Then we're going to dive into a bunch of tips and tricks. So just things that I've taken note of that you want to have ready when building a landing page. And then lastly is my own process of how I personally like to build landing pages. And the reason is that I think that there's a lot of people who build landing pages that, they're like overcomplicated, overcomplex. They're just not done in a way that's easy to understand or done in a way that's super efficient. And so what I want to do with this, my hope is that by the end of it, you'll be able to take my format of exactly how I build landing pages and just start building pages in 2 hours or less. Obviously, once you start building it, you're going to get faster and faster. The other beautiful thing about landing pages, especially if you develop it in Shopify, is you'll be able to take modules and use those modules across different pages on your site, or just take modules and mix and match and build landing pages really quickly. So in theory, you could take a module from what we're about to talk about, which is the different sections, and just compile different landing page sections together and make a whole new landing page. So that said, let's get started. So the first thing that I think you need to put at the top of the page, and I actually like to do this before I build any page. I like to write, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? Who is the customer that's going to see this page? And what's the angle? So the reason is, one, you want to figure out what is the problem. And that's kind of a combination of understanding who you're going after, why are you going after them, and like, how are you going to then appeal your product to them? Now, if you've got, let's take Rare Beauty, for example, right? If you're selling the Rare Beauty Comfort Club products to somebody who may have challenges opening things with their hand, you can speak to them with the angle of, finally, skincare products that are easy to open, or products that make it easy for you to use as, somebody who can't open normal products. If you're selling hint water, you can have the angle of get rid of that soda, no more sweet drinks that have sugar, whatever it may be. The angle is essentially how you are positioning what you are selling, right? You might be selling something. It's got 7 different ways that you can market it, but hitting that kind of jackpot row in the casino, in this case, is the equivalent of lining up who are you going after, what's the problem that they have, and what's the angle that you're coming in with to help solve that problem. So the angle, in my opinion, is the most important thing. You can test, before you decide what angle goes on the landing page, you can test this with your Facebook ads. You can test different headlines. You can test different copy in your statics and see which one gets the best click-through rate. You can test different hooks on a video. Those are essentially the same thing as angles. And this just allows you to make sure that when you go out with a landing page, you're putting something at the top of the page that is actually speaking to the consumer in a way that sort of hooks them in versus just saying something generic, right? If you say something generic, so can everybody else. And saying something generic is not great for getting somebody to be truly like hooked in and captured in that sense. So I highly, highly recommend you find a good angle. You can test a bunch of different angles, right? And you can see which ones work well or which ones work better. But if you don't have a good angle, that then the rest of the page, all the sections on that page then kind of come back to and help tie that bow, then you're sort of just speaking kind of aimlessly. And this is essentially the problem with most homepages is you're sort of just talking about your product in a way that's very generic and not speaking to a specific problem. The whole point with landing pages is you are finding specific problems to attack and to get people's attention through. So the angle for the landing page is what I'd put on the top of your page, and everything needs to go right back to that. The second thing that goes perfectly with that is copywriting. Anytime you do a rebrand, there's three things that I think make up a really good rebrand, even after you take into account all the beautiful design and whatever that comes with it when you work with an agency for a rebrand. But there's three things. One is the copywriting, one is the positioning, and one is the content. How beautiful is that photography or cinematography or whatever it is that's showing the products? Copywriting is the one that I want to highlight here, because the copywriting, good copy makes a difference between a page that converts at 9%, and that's realistic, a landing page converting at 9% versus a page that's going to convert at 2%. And you always have to think about copy going through this conveyor belt, which is that, you've got whatever the product does, it's got to go through this machine where it then changes the words into benefits. And then it comes out on the other side, again, speaking to the angle or that consumer problem that we listed at the top of the page. So for example, the ads when I joined Hint used to say 0 sugar, 0 calories, flavored water, buy it, get 20% off. And I used to wonder why, as a consumer and somebody who loved the product, how come people aren't clicking this more? How come they don't see 0 sugar, 0 calories and want to buy it? Well, it's because there's no angle there. There's nothing that sort of hooks you in or captures your attention. It's just as monotonous as every other billboard ad on the Instagram or the Facebook feed. Also, LOL, I said the Instagram. But anyways, here's a better angle. The dessert that mom never gets mad about, or a mom-approved snack, a mom-approved drink, for sports practice, right? Those are angles that now get you 1 or 2 layers in. One layer is the mom, the second layer is dessert. So you can immediately in your head, you can make the assumption that it must be healthy and safe for kids, and it must taste really good if it's being compared to dessert. The sports drink one, it must be healthy and safe for my kids, and it probably competes with the taste of a Gatorade or Powerade, right? Because you're giving those 2 layers of context in the headline. So you always have to go through that conveyor belt of like, how do I spin this to be beneficial to whoever's reading it on the other side? And if you don't have that, then you end up just spewing out features or value props, the same things that are probably listed on your product page, which those should also be rewritten to be benefits first, right? Another example with Cadence, an easy way to keep your hair and skin fresh with your own products. Peace of mind that your products won't leak in your suitcase, right? That's better than just saying leak-proof packaging or, travel with your own products, right? So anyways, stellar copywriting is an ultimate need, and you just can't get past bad copywriting. You can, but it's very hard to do. It costs a lot of money. You end up paying that difference in ad costs. I would also recommend, if you think you have really good copy, just get a copywriter to run it through or run it by, because I bet you the copywriter is going to find better ways to say things. Plus, that's what they're good at. So why not use them for that? Okay, next thing is social proof. So in my opinion, there's 3 types of social proof that you can implement on your landing page. The first is customer reviews, right? These are like your classic Okendo reviews from your site that you then pull out and put on the landing pages. You're ideally selecting ones that are talking about the benefits that are, again, written at the top of your page from your angle. So for example, if your Hint Water page is all about a 0 calorie or a sugar-free treat that moms can get behind, the customer review should also speak back to that. And ideally, you're even highlighting a couple of phrases or a couple of words in the review so that if somebody were to skim it, they still see the pieces that are most necessary out of that review. The second type of social proof you can get is established sources. Now, this depends on who your audience is. So, for example, and this is again why it's important to write out the audience at the top of the page when you start, right? If you're talking to somebody who is 65 years old or 55 years old, you're going to focus on different established sources than if you're talking to a 25-year-old or a 35-year-old, right? They view established sources as different things. One audience might see, Wirecutter and the New York Times and Women's Health as their source of established sources. Whereas a younger demo might want to see a Huberman's podcast quote or a Lauren Everett's podcast quote or something of that nature, where they see that as the established source. So the whole concept here is, and don't get focused on who I'm saying is established or not, but you have to figure out who is the quote unquote established source for the customer you're going after, and who do they see as influential. The third one is user generated content. And I don't mean, you pay somebody to make you a UGC video. I mean legit UGC content. My favorite example of this is Cadence has this customer review on Instagram where there was a drunk customer who reviewed her products, and it was one of the best videos I've ever seen, selling the product. That's the type of stuff you want. You want stuff that people actually posted on their own and were very excited to post, and you use that on your landing pages and also on your product pages. The stuff that's like where you pay somebody to make a fake, UGC video, that stuff can work in ads, but I think a lot of people see through that as well. So I would not recommend using that on your landing page. Your landing page is, the reason that could work as an ad is your ad is not selling the product. Your ad is just selling somebody to click. Once somebody gets to the landing page, you want to have the best possible stuff on this page. And again, like I said earlier, you really want to have stuff that's calling out the benefits back at the top, right? So if you had, here's a bad example. Excellent solution to an overflowing cosmetic case. Bad thing to feature, right? You don't necessarily want that. A better one would be, I'm in love with my Cadence capsules. They hold more than you can think and make my packing so much easier. I already brought more for my essential oils. Something like that is like, you can highlight, there's 3 or 4 things you can just infer from that, right? You can infer that they hold a bunch, the packing gets easier, they don't leak, and it's totally worth the money. So this is why I like to just try to pull as many things out. And honestly, the best stuff comes through in reviews and UGC. You'll also notice that there's just a pattern of things that people probably highlight. One thing that I mentioned on last week's episode was, if you take all your reviews, organize them by most talked about benefits to least, take the top 5 and turn that into a listicle. That can even be a module on this page directly. You can literally have a reviews module. You can even have a listicle module. And if you want to see how to incorporate a listicle into a really nice product page or landing page, if you go to Flaus, Flaus, their website, I think it's goflaus.com, and go to their product page, you'll see, I think it's within the first 2 to 4 sections, that we built a 7 reasons why listicle that you can side scroll. So it's a great example of a listicle. It doesn't take up too much real estate, and it still gets that point across. Now, the next thing that I like to do is what I call the 5 questions that every landing page needs to answer. You've definitely heard me talk about landing pages as red carpets. And the reason is because I think that if you're a celebrity walking a red carpet, I always think of Kim Kardashian, and there's Kim's assistant right there. Kim's assistant, AKA you as the merchant, need to make sure that this person walking the carpet has everything they could possibly need right there, right then, right? They shouldn't have to leave. If they have to leave, one, somebody's leaving the site. 2, the second they search for your brand, all your competitors are going to start showing up. 3, they're going to see that on Meta and Instagram. It's not like they're just going to only see your brand now that they're interested in it. They're going to see all of your competitors. So this is why I like to make sure that your landing page, and honestly, every page of your site, should follow this format. The 5 questions are, what is the product? And very clearly explain it. Like, I'm not saying that you make anything too complex, but also don't make anything too simple. Have kind of this perfect balance. Explain the product very simply. We sell travel capsules. They allow you to put, your shampoo, your soap, your cleansers inside without it leaking. You carry your routine wherever you go. it's like you never leave home with our products, right? Very quickly explains the product. Why does it exist? This question you can answer in a multitude of different ways. You can go with the founder story. You can go with a customer story. You can show UGC. The entire idea is not necessarily that you answer these questions verbatim, but every module throughout your page, so all the sections throughout this page, should be going through these 5 questions. Either one module might answer 1 or 2 or 3 questions. It might answer just one, but whatever it is, the idea is that with a landing page, as you're scrolling, you're constantly going through these 5 questions and getting answers over and over and over again. If at any point somebody feels like they've got enough, they can click a CTA and bounce, right? They can go to the next page, or maybe they get enough information, they decide this just isn't the product I'm looking for today. They might exit. But if they're not convinced, then they should be able to keep scrolling and keep learning from these 5 questions over and over again. So let me just go over those 5 real quick. First one's, what is the product? Second one is, why does it exist? Third one is, how does it benefit my life? Fourth one is, why is it the best option for this product? Meaning, there may be competitors to what I'm selling or to what I'm looking at buying. Why is this the best option? Why is this the best mattress? Why is this the best cookware set compared to everything else I can get? And then the last one is, how soon can I get it if I order it right now? And usually that just means, you have some sort of messaging around, your order ships within 24 hours, or your order ships within 12 hours, or order today, your order ships within 2 hours, whatever it may be. But you just want to make sure that these 5 questions are constantly being answered over and over and over again. And the entire idea, or the way that I like to do it, is I like to balance these sections out with what I call push and pull sections. Push sections are giving information. So it's explaining what is the product. It's explaining how does this benefit your life. It's explaining, why is this the best option? Maybe a comparison chart or a versus or whatever. Then you have pull sections, which are the opposite. Those are saying, hey, this is your opportunity to come and click through, or this is your opportunity to buy the product. I like to have somewhat of an either alternating or more push than pull. You never want to have more pull than push. That's what most product pages, most home pages, and most sites do. And it's usually because they're building off of templates that they, some sort of a Shopify template, or they're just not very good at speaking to a specific consumer. So they kind of end up being very generic and a little bit more on the pull side than the push. But that is usually how I go about it. Okay. The next section is the shop section. Now, the shop section is this should be the most information dense, but also beautifully organized sections of the page. You want to have a lot of information, right? You want to know, what am I buying? What all comes in the box? How long is it going to last me? What's the price? What's the price per serving or per day or per consumption? Is there any deal I get? Do I get anything else for free? Are there any awards that I should remember that this product won? Is there any sort of shipping, return, refund guarantee? Again, if I order it now, when does it get shipped? When does it arrive? What were the benefits again that people said they really loved after they tried this product? Because I need to be reconvinced before I hit the add to cart button. All these things should be in the shop section, right? Every additional option you give, every additional piece of information you give only helps get them to that end goal of hopefully adding the product to cart. The thing is, though, you can't overwhelm with information. So you have to pick and choose what data or what information you're putting in there. And the whole point here is, you've done the hard work of getting them to the shop section. So now reframe or reiterate why they're there, right? So that's kind of how I think of the shop section. Some of the tips that I would recommend: one, make the discount super obvious. So whether it's 10% off, whether it's free shipping, whether it's a gift with purchase, include the call out. So put that big sticker call out over the image. Use strike through pricing. Change the CTA to say something like save 20% and add to cart. That's what I love to do versus just, a price cross out. You could say add to cart for 20% off, and then you cross out 20 and you put, 16, whatever it may be. But the idea is that you want to make sure that you are just making it very clear what the pricing is, what the pricing difference is, and that there's no second guessing of, what's the discount, what's the deal, what's the offer. I mentioned this a second ago, but noting the cost per use. So, I remember a long time ago when I was selling electrolyte powder sticks, we would sell a 30 pack for a new customer for $29. That's less than $1 a day. That one line of copy, less than $1 a day, made a huge increase in conversion rate. When I was working with 8 Sleep a couple of years ago, I remember I came up with this line that was like, if you basically amortize the cost of an 8 Sleep mattress over 3 years, it comes out to like $2 a day, or $2 to $3 a day. And so, we had this line that was like, you don't need, basically it's cheaper than your morning coffee when you get better sleep. So you essentially save money because you sleep better. You don't need that crazy amount of caffeine in the morning because your sleep's already great. Another one we had was, the Tesla of sleep. That was one that ripped and did extremely well. But again, it's just, I guess that goes back to the stellar copywriting versus the shop section. But again, it kind of tells you how just one good line of copy can change everything. Reinforcing the benefits, adding social proof and or delivery info is another really good one. I think Casper does a really good job of this. And also there's a brand called Miracle Sheets. Their landing pages do a good job of this. They even have a little flashing green light that says, warehouse online, order ships within 45 minutes, something like that. And then the last piece of the shop section is the variant selector. This is probably one of the most important pieces. You have to make this so stupid simple. You have to assume that your grandma is using a iPhone 7 with a home button on really slow Wi-Fi. So the options should load very quickly. They should be very easy to follow, 1, 2 max steps, right? You don't want more than 2 steps for somebody to choose a variant. That could be size and color, for example. You don't want to go more than that. And the last thing here is you also want to make the buttons very easy. So a lot of times if you go to a variant selector on a website, it's hard to know what's actually clickable and what's not. And this is where you get this concept of dead clicks or rage clicks. Dead clicks are people clicking, but nothing happens. And rage clicks is that, but just multiple clicks within a short amount of time. You don't want that to happen. So the easiest thing you can do is just make it very, very, very obvious. Hey, step 1, choose your color. Step 2, choose your size, right? Or step 1, choose your weight. Step 2, choose your flavor, whatever it may be. But make it very, very simple. And there should be no questions as to once you get there, where do you look first? Where do you look second? How do you choose the variants? And then how do you add to cart? Now, after the shop section, I usually like to put this either right before or right after, depending on how intuitive the product is. But I like to put like a how it works and a what's inside. So a lot of people tend to avoid this because, you tend to be internal at a brand when you're building the page. So they tend to think, well, it's kind of obvious what comes in the box or how it works. But I'm a fan of really explaining this. If you're selling consumables, you almost have to include the ingredients panel, which is part of the how it works or the what's inside. But separate to that too, you also want to outline steps. So I see this with supplement brands work really well. If you've got like a supplement, most people are like, well, when's the supplement actually going to start working? And supplements, alternative to, prescriptions tend to work right away, but they're also drugs. Supplements may take, 30, 60, 90 days before you really start to feel the ongoing effects. So for example, a how it works section for a supplement page might have, days 0 to 30. This is what you can expect. Days 30 to 60, this is what you can expect. Days 60 plus, this is what you can expect. For unboxing a cookware set, it might be like, how it works. Well, the products arrive. This is how you clean or season your pans. And then this is how you continue to wash after each use. So just making it very simple and sort of like bringing you into that, inner experience of as if you have the product. So people can kind of personify what that feels like or how it would go down. A few years ago, without Prescient, I would have said there's no real way to track what channels like YouTube, TV, or even newcomers like AppLovin are doing. But with Prescient, you can now look at daily omni-channel forecasting and optimize your paid media without any bias. Today, brands like Portland Leather, Sattva, Jones Road, Hexclad, and so many more of our clients use Prescient to understand what these top-of-funnel channels actually do to impact their sales in retail, Amazon, and their DTC site. Last-click channels have taken too much credit for far too long and reduced confidence in upper-funnel channels. Prescient allows you to see the halo effect that is usually unrecognized with top-of-funnel channels and allows you to measure those down to the campaign level. See the impact of upper funnel on your revenue, ROAS, and new customers today by going to prescientai.com/limited to learn more. That's prescientai.com/limited. Next one is the brand story. So this is actually something that I love doing whenever there's really good founder stories tied to a brand. Not every brand has an amazing founder story as to why it was created. Some brands are, created because they're just good businesses or good opportunities. But, one that I remember specifically here was when I worked with Orgain a few years ago. They're the number one plant protein brand. And, they had an amazing founder story where Andrew, who's the founder, created the product out of his own need when he was getting treatment and just needed better products to consume. So, building out a module or two where we spoke about the brand story, the founder story, how he came to invent the product as a direct result of what he was going through. This type of stuff does extremely well. I also talked about advertorials in the last episode. Taking founder stories and turning them into advertorials is also a phenomenal strategy. And I did a lot of that, or I have done a lot of that, still do a lot of that. And it tends to work really, really well. A good brand story is a phenomenal way to build trust, to show efficacy, and to also show that, you're like a brand here with a mission. You're not just here to go and get people's dollars and put them on subscription and try to get the most money out of them, right? You're like building a product that's solving a real need. Okay, so those are the modules that I recommend. Now, I'm going to quickly zip through a bunch of tactical landing page tips that I've noted down. And then after that, I want to dive into my process really quick. So let's go through these tactical tips. So number one, leverage more social proof from real world humans, not just models and paid creators. Everybody can smell the bullshit, so be selective there. Number two, don't be so chunky with your copy. Get punchy, get savvy, and focus on the benefits, not just value props. Number three, design for mobile first. 80% of your traffic is going to be mobile devices. You should also look at what percent of your traffic is actually driving conversion. A lot of times mobile is used for discovery, and depending on the AOV, mobile also might be the purchase, or it might be desktop that's a purchase. So be very meticulous about that, and then optimize that way. Also, if you know that mobile is where people discover and desktop is purchase, make it easy for people who discover your landing page on mobile to find that again on desktop. I think that's number four. Number four, make your pricing, discounts, and offers super noticeable. Do anything you can to make the pricing and discounts pop. Use different colors, different fonts, different weighting. Use highlights, use stickers. You can also use colored CTAs because they stand out more. Number five, if you sell a consumable, include your price per use, which we talked about. Number six, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so use a lot more of them. I would also recommend you use illustrations, icons, graphs, charts, any sort of motion-based graphs or motion-based or animation-based things that can, for example, show like how does the science of this supplement work. I would definitely do that. I think that they get a lot more engagement, and it's a lot easier to show people things visually than it is to go ahead and just write it out and let them kind of figure out how that makes sense. Next one, make your pop-up form a value-added experience. So for example, don't just say enter your email and get a discount. Maybe it's enter your email and get X. Enter your email, be entered to Y. Enter your email and you'll get a free X, right? So something that's there. Next one, make sure everything on your landing page is ADA compliant. Just because it's not on your main site does not mean you can skip the whole ADA compliance piece. Make sure your fonts are the appropriate size. You don't have white font on a colored background, etc. And I've also sent a past newsletter on ADA compliance that I did with Nick Puggi, who's the lawyer that handles the most ADA cases in the country. If you didn't get that, or if you want a copy of that, just shoot me a DM on Twitter. I'll send it to you. Next one, simplify your checkout experience. A customer should never have to click more than twice in order to check out. You're likely, if you have more than that, you may have an entire domain.com/cart, an entire cart page dedicated or in the middle of your process. Get rid of that. No one likes those separate cart pages. They don't do well for conversion. And everything you do there, you can do in a slide out cart. And it's also just easier, faster. Again, thinking back to the grandmas with a small iPhone and slow internet, that just adds a huge opportunity for somebody to leave. Next one, put your very best offer at the top of the page. This could be a banner bar. It could be the first bundle that you're showing. It could be a pop-up also. So a lot of times too, if you have a really good offer, make sure your pop-up again screams that offer. You can enter the email to get the discount. Regardless of if they do or not, they can still obviously get the discount. Next one is always have a comparison chart. I've never seen a comparison chart that never makes me feel more educated without the purchase, about the purchase. They're always such an easy way to understand how does this product differ from competitors, or why should I buy this version of the product versus buying somebody else's? And a lot of times too, comparison charts, you can sort of orient them around what makes your product stand out amongst its competitors. So I would do that. Obviously, you want to make it reasonable. You don't want to have just checks on yours and X's on everything else for everybody else. You want to make it believable and realistic. So don't obviously trick people, but at the same time, make sure you speak a little bit more to what makes you guys set yourself apart. Next one's elevate your design. If it's 2025 and you're not designing properly, you're just designing, you're designing for no reason, because if people see something that's poorly designed, they have the trust is just not there. Good design equals trust immediately. It's like it's like somebody speaking in a British accent. You don't know why, you trust it more. Good design is like that. As soon as people see good design, it's a lot more trustworthy than something that looks like it was pieced together with different font sizes and no real hierarchy and no attention to detail, things like that. Next one is always add the shipping information. Make it very clear. If the product gets ordered today, does it ship today? If it gets ordered today, does it arrive within 2 days, 3 days, 5 days? Is there a delay, et cetera, et cetera? If I'm not happy with the product, can I email somebody and immediately send it back? Do I get a refund? Like, what happens if I am not really vibing with the product? Next one is have a hierarchy in your text size, which I just talked about. So there's a reason why H1, H2, and H3 text exist. One, it's great for SEO. Two, you want to have those variations in your landing pages or even across your site, because you want to make it easy for somebody's eyes to follow exactly where to look and in which order you want them to look. So that hierarchy is really important. You can't have everything be the same size. You can't have everything be huge or everything be small. You've got to have a really good balance of what size, what element on the page is which size. Next one is add quotes that call out benefits, not just features. So we talked about this earlier. For example, if you're selling Simple Modern, you want the review to say, "I love the teal color and that its bottles are machine washable," right? That's a good quote. But a great quote would be, "Upgrading to the 64-ounce tumbler changed my life. I drink more water today than I ever have before. I feel much healthier and I have more energy, all because of being hydrated." So you want to get a quote that speaks to the benefits. The first one I read, it was all right. It talks about the teal color and that it's machine washable, but a much better quote talks about how somebody's life got better instantly as a result. Next one, don't say buy now, just say add to cart. That's a little simple one that I like. Even in your slide out cart, you don't have to say buy now. You can say go to checkout or proceed to checkout or go to secure checkout, something like that. Next tip, use heatmap.com. Study the heat maps, learn where people are bouncing, where they're falling off, what elements people are clicking that are driving more revenue, how far people are scrolling down. So use all of that data. It helps you understand, do you need to change modules and move the how it works section up because it gets a lot more engagement right before the sale? Do you need to take the comparison chart and move that up? Maybe the why brand ? Section of the page doesn't really matter as much. It's not getting a bunch of engagement, so maybe move that down on the page. But you can use Heatmap to actually see user sessions and then decide based on patterns that you see from there exactly how you want to move things around. I would also organize your landing page the same way you would organize a physical storefront. So somebody walked into your store in Soho, what items you want them to see first? What's the associated photo and sign or banners you want them to see? How would you merchandise the product differently? I always like to think of your e-commerce store as just your 10x retail spot, because everybody loves to invest a bunch of money into retail stores. They don't like to invest a bunch into their website for some reason, even though the website's going to do 10 times more sales or more than what your retail store is going to do. Next one is, whenever possible, reduce the amount of text you can put on the page. So how can you say the same thing with fewer words? Or how can you use icons or illustrations versus just using chunks of text? If you have chunks of text and you can't use icons, use bullet points. You want to have things that are easy to scan. Think about the last time you went to a landing page or a website or a product page and you just read paragraphs on paragraphs. It's one, it's annoying. Two, people don't have the time for that. They see a paragraph. It's the same reason when you send a cold email, you got to send something brief and quick, easy to read. No one looks at a chunk of text and thinks, I want to read that. Okay, a couple more here before we go to my process. When a customer leaves a review or you highlight a review on the landing page, you should highlight what product they bought, add verified purchaser, add their name, maybe add their photo, and definitely add how many stars they gave. So for example, that review I read earlier about Simple Modern, which I made up, next to it I would write, review by, Jeff Lowenstein. Jeff bought 3 teal tumblers from Simple Modern. And it's just one thing that you can add that just gets, it just feels a lot more real than just, a quote by Jeff, right? The next one is, if it's a limited time offer, make sure you highlight that, but also don't lie, because there's rules around how long you can be running a promo before the FTC actually doesn't believe it's a promo. Videos. UGC videos convert really well. Now, my only flag here is there's a lot of apps that host UGC videos on your site. You can do this with YouTube Shorts. You can do it with Vimeo. You don't have to use a UGC video app. The other thing too is, in browsers for like Instagram browser, in the Facebook browser, and the Twitter browser, and the TikTok browser, sometimes these UGC video apps, if you load a product page or a site that has these videos hosted by a third-party app versus like a YouTube Shorts or something, you get to the page on mobile and it just starts playing the video in full screen. So you can't even swipe out of it in order to see the page. It just kind of ruins that experience. So if you have that, make sure you double, triple, quadruple check that. So, you're not having that issue when people are going to your site. Also, another reason to have heat map on your site, so that you can isolate traffic by UTM and look at those session recordings and see if anybody else is running into those issues too. Next one is, don't hide the return information. If somebody wants to make a return, make it really obvious. Is there a money back guarantee? Is there a return policy? What happens? Do I ship the product back? Do I just get a refund? Do I write into customer service? Do I have to call a phone number? Just make it very, very easy. Okay, I'm going to skip a few here that I've already spoken to. All right, last one I want to talk about here before I get into the process is testing variations. There is, when you run your website, you're essentially running one version of the site to all your traffic. Most people don't tend to have multiple versions of their site based on traffic source, or if somebody's come back. Some of the larger, like, Banana Republic might do it. If you shop there for men's and you go back, your homepage might only show men's products, but most consumer brands that are under maybe like $500 million in revenue aren't doing that. And so the best place to do that is by testing different variations of a landing page. So now, if you've got a format that works, just like on static ads I've talked about, where if you have a layout or a line of copy that works, you test the opposite. So you got a layout that works, test it with a bunch of different copy. If you have a line of copy that works, test it with a bunch of different layouts. I would do the same thing here. If you have an angle that works, test it out with different offers, test it out with different formats of a page. And vice versa. If you have a merchandising or if you've got a bundle or an offer that works really well, test it out with different styles of pages. The beauty about landing pages too, especially if you develop them in Shopify, you can immediately duplicate them, change sections out, move sections around. You can duplicate it, change the imagery, you can duplicate it, change the headline, whatever it may be, but very easy to test variations and go about that. Okay. Last part I want to talk through very quickly is my process to build landing pages. So in the past, I would normally just open up a Figma file, or I'd open up a new page on Unbounce, and I would just start dragging things in and sort of arrange it how I feel. It's a process that works. It takes a long time. Like, it used to take me 8 to 10 hours to complete a full page that I was really proud of when I would do that on Unbounce. But I want to tell you about my process now, because I think it's a lot simpler. and easier to do. So the first thing I do is research. So I really try to figure out the problem I'm solving for. It forces me to get super clear on where the traffic is coming from, what the market is saying, which I usually gather from commentary I see on Reddit, on TikTok, on Twitter, and what the angle is going to be. So once I've gotten the research, I usually copy paste a bunch of stuff into a massive Google Doc, and then from there decide how I want to move forward. Then once I've got everything there, I actually take everything, and I still don't have Figma or Unbounce or any of the design tools open. I just write the landing page in a second Google Doc. So I usually have one open on the left side of the screen with all the research, and then one on the right side where I'm now taking all the things I love and just sort of arranging them section by section. So all those sections I just talked about, I'm now putting that in a Google Doc and making it as information dense as I possibly can. Now, I think of this as kind of like the brief for the landing page design. So I put everything there, all the research, all the content modules. I might rewrite some copy with teammates here, but essentially by the end of this doc, you basically have all the content that you want to then transfer onto a page. Now from here, then I'll open up Figma, and I'll usually open up a iPhone size wireframe. You press F, and then on the right side, you choose iPhone Pro design, put that in, and then I just start building out section by section. So now I've got Figma on the right side and a Google Doc on the left, and I'm just taking them and just building out sections. It's really fast because all I'm doing is copy pasting. I'm not thinking about what is the content I want. Once everything's laid out, then I'll go take another once through or a pass through and figure out exactly what I want to keep, what I want to change, what I want to rearrange, what I want to omit. If there's a different way I want to say something, all of that happens in the Figma file. From there, I then pass it over to my team at Sharma Brands, where they do all the UI design and then they develop it. And the main thing is just that when we develop it, we put it into a battle-tested CMS. So for example, would I use a brand new page builder if I'm working with a brand that's used to doing 50, 100, 200 million on their site? Probably not, because I don't believe that's battle-tested. I like to personally use CMSs that I feel are really, really stable, have zero shot of breaking, and I can feel confident in when I either am doing it myself or doing it with a client. That's my process. The way that I just outlined that process of research, then copy, then wireframe, then UI, then dev. From the process of research to the end of the wireframe, you can get that done in 2 hours or less. And then the UI design, you give your brand book to a designer, and they go about it. And the dev, those are probably, a day's worth of work, maybe 2 days max if you do it well. But that's a process I recommend, and hopefully you can leverage it too. That is all I've got for today's episode. So that concludes the 2-part 13-page landing page breakdown. Again, if you want to see the full 13-page email / process of building landing pages, just go to nick.co/landing pages, and that full doc is available for you. I think you should be able to download it as well. And hopefully that was helpful. Next week, we've got a really exciting episode with another founder who's scaled one of the fastest growing brands in this space. So I'm excited to share that. And if you've got any other landing page questions, or you're just unclear how to move forward about something related to landing pages or advertorials or what style to build or whatnot, shoot me a DM on Twitter. If you've got a page for me to review and go leave some comments or a quick Loom video, also send me that page on Twitter. Last week I mentioned that, and I said there was going to be 5 people who take me up on it. There was about 25, so that was great. So send those over, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time to cut through the noise on CPG, retail, and e-commerce. If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with a friend? And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss the next one.